Thank you to Pastor Brian wrapping up that series last week. We are jumping into a brand new series here in Revelation. I want to jump right into it because there is a fear that I think none of us ever say out loud. It's the idea that someday you look up and you observe what's happening around us in the world and you find out that nobody's driving. The car is doing 80 miles an hour. The road's dark. And the driver's seat, it seems to be empty. Now, a month ago, I told you about a trip that I took to South Sudan in 2010, but I did not tell you what I brought home. Something on that plane came home with me. I couldn't see it, I couldn't feel it, and it was in my blood, and it was killing me. Nobody knew what it was, not the doctors, not my wife, not even me. And I think we all carry some version of a fear that is like that. Not malaria, but a fear that is even bigger, something greater that we carry around that is hard for us to admit, but it's something that all of our brains go to at one time or another. That the whole thing, everything around us, seems to be completely out of control. History feels like a car without a driver. Wars that no one can stop, an economy that no one seems to be able to steer, headlines that read like the wheels are coming off. And the people in charge, they look as clueless as we are. So what do? We grip harder. We plan more. We check the news. We check the feed like we're checking the mirrors in the car. Because if nobody's driving this thing, then it's all on me. And underneath that fear is one even deeper and one that we don't really discuss. It's a quieter fear that we have. And it's this, that if somebody is driving, there is someone who is driving, he isn't looking at me. I mean, he's got galaxies to run, right? He's got nations to sort out. He doesn't see my house. He doesn't see my wife. He doesn't see my kids, my marriage. He doesn't see my Tuesday. So maybe, just maybe, somebody is up there holding the universe, but nobody's holding me. That is the deeper fear that many of us hold. And it shows up at different addresses in your life. The scan results that they said that they would call you with, they've yet to call you. The adult kid who won't return your phone call, and you're not even sure what state they're in. The retirement number that you keep checking, and every time you do, it keeps shrinking. The marriage that seems to have gone cold, and there's nothing you can do that you can figure out to warm it back up. Or you have a parent who might be slipping, and there's no pill organizer, no schedule, no visit that changes or slows it down. Or maybe it's a job that lives or dies on a decision being made in a room that you are not sitting in. Or a child with a diagnosis, a therapy calendar, and you have no idea what's happening beyond Friday. Or maybe your feeling is it's just the world itself. There's a feed that you scroll at midnight, trying to find some relief, trying to find some security, and you're watching the road from the back seat. That fear is why we are spending the next 4 weeks in the last book of the Bible, Revelation. Most people do just one of two things with the book of Revelation. The first thing they do is they turn it into a puzzle. You've got their charts and they've got their graphs, their timelines, and they're trying to match, beasts to headlines in the news. And the other thing that they do is they start reading it and they just close it and slowly back away. Whoa! I don't know. That's for some other day. I have no idea what's happening here. I want you to know that both of those are fears wearing a different disguise. I want you to hear the claim that this series is going to stand on. For the next 4 weeks, we will stand on this. Revelation was written to calm, scared Christians, not to scare calm ones. The book of Revelation was written to calm, scared Christians, not to scare calm ones. The word itself, revelation, means unveiling, pulling back the curtain, basically. God isn't hiding the future from you. The book of Revelation, he is pulling back the curtain so you can see. He's doing it on purpose so you can see who is standing behind everything. So let's look. It's about 60 years after Jesus rose from the dead, and there's an old man in a prison on an island called Patmos. His name? John. And if early church memory is correct, and I believe that it is, this is the same John who leaned on Jesus at the Last Supper. Rome had this habit of removing troublesome voices by putting water between them and their audience. And Patmos was a shelf where the empire set things that it just wanted to forget. And if you look at John's life from the outside, the other apostles, all gone, most of them killed. The churches that John loves are under tremendous pressure and attack, and he can't get to them. And he is an old man on a rock in the sea. If anyone ever had the right to conclude that heaven had gone quiet, it was John in this situation. But instead, it's Sunday. And John is worshiping. And he's worshiping alone. There's no congregation. There's no music. It's just him keeping an appointment that no one else can see. And then as he writes down for us, while worshiping, behind him, he hears a sound. A sound that is loud, like a trumpet. And John turns around to see what's behind him. When I turned to see who was speaking to me, I saw 7 gold lampstands, and standing in the middle of the lampstands was someone like the Son of Man. He was wearing a long robe and a gold sash across his chest. He goes on to tell us that he has eyes like flames of fire, and his face shone like the sun, and he had a voice that sounded like the ocean itself. Can you imagine this? What John sees when he turns around in his private worship moment of just doing church. And then John, the man who had leaned on Jesus' chest at the Last Supper, hits the ground like a dead man when he sees it. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as if I were dead. But he laid his right hand on me and said, "Don't be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I died, but look, I am alive forever and ever. I hold the keys of death and the grave." Who is this? Well, the book directly tells us. 2 verses later, Jesus explains this whole picture, that the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. The book of Revelation interprets itself. You don't need a decoder ring for Revelation. Just keep reading. It interprets itself as it goes along. So let's put the picture together. 7 churches behind John while he's worshiping. And who's at the center? Where is he standing? The center. He's right there in the middle of them. Jesus isn't watching his churches from a distance. He doesn't just check in with them once a quarter. He's standing in the middle of his church, in the middle of the pressure that they're going through, in the middle of the mess that they experience. And for those 7 churches, that picture means everything. Because the empire had put water between them and John. But nothing, and I mean nothing, put distance between them and Jesus. Right there in the center. Now, Hillcrest, it is your turn to hear it. Because he is standing in the middle of this church too. And he's holding keys. And whoever holds the keys owns the door. Death has been one door standing between the end of every human hallway and the one that no strength can open and no money can buy off. And Jesus stands in front of a frightened old man and says, in effect, I've been through that door. It couldn't hold me. And on my way back out, I took the keys. Death is still real. It still grieves every single one of us. And the book doesn't pretend otherwise, and neither will I. But death is no longer in charge of its own door. Catch that. Death is no longer in charge of its own door. Someone else holds the keys now, and he has scars on his hands, and he is for us. Now, here's a truth that I believe this room needs to hear. You not being in control has never meant nothing is in control. You got to hear that. It sounds a little weird the way I have that phrase, but it's important. You not being in control has never meant nothing is in control. And we confuse these two constantly. My grip fails, so there must be no grip. I can't see the driver, so there must be no driver. I've lost the handle of my own life, so nobody is holding it. And I want you to know that math is wrong. The throne is not empty. John thought he was all alone on the island of Patmos, but he wasn't. The church thought Rome was driving history, and it wasn't. Hillcrest, the throne is not empty, and he has not left the room. Look, when you were a kid, you fell asleep in the back seat of the car. Dark highway, rain on the glass, 2 hours away from home, and you don't lose 1 minute of sleep. And why? Because you weren't driving. You couldn't even see over the dash. But somebody up front knew the road. Someone up front was in control. And then somewhere between the back seat and this morning, you took back the whole wheel of your life. Both hands. And you're white knuckling it. Like everything depends on your grip on your life. It's no wonder that you're exhausted. Revelation was written to show you the driver's seat of history. That it is not empty. It never was. Somebody up front still knows the road. And he is not asking you to drive. He's asking you to ride along like you did when you were 8 years old. And trust him behind the wheel. You don't have to crack the code of your life. You don't have to crack the code of history. You have to keep the faith. It's not about making it all make sense. It's about staying faithful in the middle of it. So I came home from South Sudan and I started feeling bad. And I did what I always do when I get sick. I ignore it. I want to be transparent with you. I am truly a terrible patient. I just push through sickness. Whatever it might be, I just push through. I figured I can do my job with a fever. I've done it plenty. So I delayed for days. My wife kept pushing me to go in. I kept telling her, I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's good. I'm fine. I was not fine. I did not feel fine. And when I finally went in, they couldn't find what was wrong with me. They knew I went to Africa, but the idea of malaria was too far away from that trip. They said, no, it's not possible for this to be malaria. So they looked for something else, and they couldn't find it. They ran everything and every test they possibly could, every scan that they had, every machine they could stuff my body in, needles in my spine, IVs in both arms, nothing. And meanwhile, this is what was happening in me. Malaria, if you're not aware, is a parasite that lives inside your blood. It invades your blood, your red blood cells, and then it explodes them. And then the shrapnel of that floats around in your bloodstream and then gets stuck in your organs and piles up in your organs until your organs shut down. And then what happens? You're dead. That's how malaria kills you. That was the timeline I was on. The fevers came in waves. Burning up, then drenched in sweat, then shaking with chills, then the burning started up again. And when the burning would get hot enough, I would start hallucinating. And I was unconscious for a lot of those bouts. And my wife watched all of it happen and couldn't stop it. I was dying. We didn't even know it yet. And the date was coming quick. Even when it started earlier on in acute care, I'm not proud of this, I was resistant, heavily resistant. Still pushing back on recommendations. Still telling myself I can get on top of this. But I couldn't get on top of it because it was in my blood. And then my body finally made the decision and took the decision away from me. By the end, there was no managing left on my part, no negotiating. I was in full surrender to malaria, partly because I finally admitted that I was not okay, and partly because I was not conscious enough to fight anymore. Somebody finally thought malaria and said, let's test it. It's not a regular blood test. You don't just draw your blood and test it. They have to test it right there in the room. They draw it out of your body. They have a giant piece of glass. It's got squares marked all through it, and they put a dot on each square, and they smear it. It's called a smear test. And someone that knows what they're looking at looks at that and can see the dead or the blown up red blood cells on the smear, and then they go, malaria. It's not like something you just test. That's how you discover it. And I was one of the first cases in Sioux Falls back then, and I became a lab rat. Every phlebotomist, every blood person was they brought the school in there to learn how to do this, and they do the smear tests, and I didn't care, just get me better. My recovery took months. They told me that malaria could come back at any time. It took 10 years before I got the all clear from the doctors. And the whole time that this was going on, I was insisting that I could drive this thing. I was insisting that I could hold the wheel, that I could control this, that I could do something. But I wasn't driving anything. I couldn't control what was taking place. The thing that was actually running my body was completely invisible to me. My grip was gone weeks before I would even admit it. Every mirror I checked was useless to me. And the whole time, the one holding the keys of death and the grave was standing in that hospital room with me. And I didn't learn that because a fever broke. I learned that on the way back down. When every handle that I reached for came off of my hands, and someone was still holding me. The throne is not empty. I just couldn't see it from inside of a fever. So now 4 chapters into Revelation, John gets pulled higher. A door stands open in heaven. And the first thing that John sees, before angels, before music, John sees a throne. And he sees it occupied. Not a committee, not an empty chair with "Be back soon" signs stuck on it. The control room of the universe has a seat of power, and someone is sitting in it. Then I saw a scroll in the right hand of the one who was sitting on the throne. And there was writing on the inside and outside of the scroll, and it was sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel who shouted with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to break the seals on the scroll and open it?" But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll and read it. And then I began to weep bitterly, because no one was found worthy to open the scroll and read it. But one of the 24 elders said to me, "Stop weeping. Look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the heir of David's throne, has won victory. He is worthy to open the scroll and its 7 seals." That scroll that was being held is something like the title deed to history. God's purpose for the entire world. His answer to everything that is broken. It is written and it is ready. The whole future is rolled up in his hand. And no one can open it. Not an angel. Not a king. Not a government. Not a genius. No creature on heaven or on earth can run history, or read its ending. So John weeps bitterly. He's not crying over a locked file cabinet. He is weeping over the possibility that the story has no one to finish it, that evil is going to go unanswered in the world, that history is just going to run on, mile after mile, driverless. And I think that's us, by the way, because any person who has ever stared at the ceiling at 2 a.m. crying out for somebody to do something has stood exactly where John was standing. And then an elder taps his shoulder. Stop weeping. Look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah has won. And John hears a lion. What sound might that be? How did he know without seeing it that it's a lion? He hears a lion. He knows he hears a lion, and he turns around to look at it. I think if there was a lion behind me, I might turn around too. Then I saw a lamb that looked as if it had been slaughtered, but now it was standing. And he stepped forward and he took the scroll from the right hand of the one sitting on the throne. John hears a lion, and when he turns to look, he sees a lamb with its death wounds still showing, slaughtered and standing. The cross was carried right into the throne room, and he was wearing it like his credentials. And then the deed to history changes hands. From the Father's hand to the scarred one. Now, if you think that he just holds history but skips the details, you have to back up 2 chapters. Because before any of these visions, Jesus dictated 7 short letters to the 7 churches that were the lampstand. And every letter turns on the exact same 2 words. I know. I know the things you do. I know about your suffering. I know where you live. And here's the detail of this that should really stop us. Only 2 of the 7 letters carry no correction at all. And they went to the 2 weakest churches on the list. Smyrna is dirt poor. And Philadelphia told to its face, you have little strength. These are the congregations that no one was writing home about. And to Smyrna, Jesus says, I know about your suffering and your poverty, but you are rich. And for those believers, I know meant I saw. I saw what holding on cost you, when holding on earned you nothing that anyone could see. You thought the ledger was blank, but instead the ledger is full. Hillcrest, it's now your turn to hear it. And please, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not telling that because God holds the scroll that every story resolves like mine did. I got a diagnosis in time, and I got a recovery. And some of you have prayed hard over somebody else and buried them anyway. So I won't insult you with tying a bow on top of that. But the keys of death and the grave don't mean death never comes to your house. It comes for all of us. But it does mean that death doesn't get to keep whatever it takes. The Lamb holding the scroll doesn't mean that the hard chapters get skipped. It means the hard chapters aren't the last chapters. And the author knows exactly which page you are on. So here's the line that I want to reset how you see the entire book of Revelation, and if I can be bold enough, how you see your whole life. The future isn't locked code. It isn't a code that somebody has to crack. It's a sealed scroll already held in the hand of the Lamb. Because locked means you have to figure it out. You have to decode it. You have to predict it. You have to prep for it. It's on you if it's locked. But if it's held, if your history, if your life, if this world and how it ends is held means it's not on you, and it never was. And the ending is already in scarred hands. So you can stop decoding. And hands holding it knows your name. It's not God so loved the world in bulk. It's not he loved the whole world from a distance. He says, I know. I know your church. I know your street. I know your family. I know your Tuesday. You don't have to crack the code because somebody already holds it. You are held and you are seen. Think of every building that you've ever walked into. Do you know it was finished before it was even started? Before the first shovel hits the ground, there was a blueprint for the building. Somebody had already drawn the last wall. The crew never just shows up and guesses the shape of the building. They build toward plans that already exist. And here is what Revelation has to say about history. It is not a guess. Heaven holds a finished set of plans, and the one holding them has scars on his hands. You may not know, and you do not know what tomorrow looks like. I want you to know that is all right. Because you weren't the architect of tomorrow. You never were. You don't have to crack the code of your life. You have to keep your faith. March of 2020, remember that year? Overnight, everything I knew about being a pastor stopped working. The building went quiet, and then there was a confusion. Do we meet? Do we not meet? People in this church were even fighting about it. We were trying to abide by the rules. Other churches were not necessarily abiding by the rules. And folks noticed, and it pinned us against each other. And I was lonely, and it was a fearful time. And some nights I generally didn't know if the church was going to make it the way that we understood it. And on top of it, I had to learn how to get the Word of God out through a camera. I had never streamed anything in my life, and the learning curve was not a curve, it was a cliff. And I had to climb straight up that cliff. And that climbing had a deadline every 7 days called Sunday. And Sunday didn't care what I had figured out between one Sunday and the next. It started with a cell phone right there, propped up, and we did our best. By the end, it was pan tilt cameras, full production software, and in between were hundreds of hours that none of you ever saw. I was buying gear I didn't understand. I was troubleshooting things that on Saturday night worked perfectly, and we went live on Sunday. It all failed. And most of the time, there was no one in the building except me and our ragtag crew, preaching many times to an empty room, just those that came to help with worship and help to run the machines. I felt like I was trying to hold things together with both hands. I was sure that nobody had any idea what it was costing us. And then one day, an email showed up. It was from a man in our church named Tim. Tim's job was learning new technology, new systems, new software, steep curves. That was his world. And he wrote me. And I want to read you some of it because I still remember what this email did to me in that moment. He said that the job that we had done with the virtual services was phenomenal. That was his word. And he said this, quote, I probably have as good an idea as just anyone in our congregation, the effort it is taking and the hours and hours you have spent learning and troubleshooting all of this. He said technical implementations never go as planned. He said you test everything, and you take it live, and something breaks. And something live is always just different enough from the test. He said that the work was letting people connect at a time that they needed it most. And he offered to be a second set of eyes anytime. He told me that his family was praying for us. At the bottom of the email, there was a PS. He told Carrie what he was writing, and she said, sign it from her too. One email in the loneliest season of my ministry. One note from a man who had already climbed enough cliffs like mine to know exactly what he was looking at. Somebody knew. And I must have read that week 5 times. And not because I needed a compliment, but because I needed to know that I was being seen, that I wasn't invisible. I thought I was invisible and I was wrong. Hillcrest, that's when we know. That's when we need to remember. That's when we need to recall the book of Revelation where Jesus says, I know. It's not just this ancient mail for us. 7 exhausted churches. Certainly nobody saw what faithfulness was costing them. And Jesus opens his mouth to every one of these churches with the words that they needed the most. I know. I see it. All of it. The hours that nobody counts. The pressure that nobody is clapping for. He saw them, and he sees you. And that's the part I love. And the man who wrote the email, Tim, he is now one of my elders today. The guy who saw me in the dark now stands with me holding this church up. God wasn't watching that season. He was already building out of it. So I want to give you an assignment this week. Small amount of homework. One small thing. Can you do it? I'm going to give it to you anyways. I want you to take out a card, a sticky note, whatever it might be. You're going to put it on a mirror. Put it wherever you see in the morning, like wherever you spend just like 2 minutes every single morning. And I want you to write down one thing in your life that feels the most out of control. Okay, you're going to write it on that sticky note, the thing that makes you feel most out of control. And then what I want you to do is I want you to stand in front of that mirror every single morning, and I want you to say this out loud as you look at what you wrote. I'm not holding this. You are. I'm not holding this thing. You are. That's it. One card, one sentence, 7 mornings I want you to do this. And fair warning, day one, the sentence is going to feel like a lie to you. Because your hands are still going to want the wheel. But I want you to say it anyways, and keep saying it every single morning as you look at what you wrote on that card. What you wrote on that card, you might have thought about when I went through that list earlier in the service. Whatever it is that God has put on your heart, even here this morning, I want you to write on that card and say, I'm not holding this, you are. By day 7, it may not have fixed the thing, but you might finally know who is holding this thing that you put on the card. And that changes how you carry everything else. 4 weeks from now, you will have walked the entire book of Revelation. And here's the one line that it stands on. It's true this morning, and it will be true at the end. You don't have to crack the code. You have to keep the faith. You don't have to crack the code of Revelation. You don't have to crack the code of your life. You don't have to crack the code of somebody else's life. You don't have to crack the code of the government. You don't have to crack the code of your political party. You don't have to crack the code of the economy. You don't have to crack the code of any of it. You have to keep your faith. That's what Jesus wants us to know. The throne is not empty. He has not left the room. So we're going to close the service with a song. And some of the words in this song, all these words, it can be our prayer this morning. But the one that really grabbed me this morning is the idea where the lyrics say, seasons change and you remain the same. Seasons in our life change. God remains the same. We can trust in Him. We can have faith in Him. So let's stand together and let's sing.